Got some fresh information for you here from the FTC all about your YouTube channel. Is your content directed to children? It says here, even though growing a beard does identify that you, the content creator, are indeed over the age of 13, that doesn't necessarily mean that your content itself isn't directed towards kids. Furthermore, Rob, if you thought that would get you past the FTC and COPPA, you are wrong. You are and it's in bold here, idiot. It's a bit harsh.
vidIQ.
vidIQ.
vidIQ.com.
Hello, I'm Rob and welcome back to vidIQ, the YouTube tool and channel that aims to educate you on your YouTube journey. For all of the latest YouTube tips, tricks, advice and news, make sure to subscribe and click on the notification bell to make sure you don't miss any of our content. As always, folks, FTC COPPA lesson is now in session. Now, usually when I have a piece of paper in front of me, it's a joke and it has nothing on it, but I've actually printed out this new piece of information from the FTC, and it's all about content directed towards children, because that's been a huge confusion and chaos-inducing panic for a lot of creators as they just don't understand what content is appropriate for children or not. So this document tries to explain it, and we're going to look through it right now. To very quickly summarise, YouTube has been collecting data on children under the age of 13, which violates the Children's Online Privacy and Protection Act in the US. As a result, the FTC has fined YouTube, and now we, as video creators, must all decide whether or not our content is made for kids. We have a growing playlist of videos that go into all sorts of details. Check them out via the link on screen now after you've finished watching this video. Alright, right off the bat, I don't know why, but there's a passage here at the top that just ticks me off. Under COPPA, how do I know if my channel is directed to children? We've heard that question from channel owners, sometimes called content creators. They almost make it sound like a dirty word, content creators. Well, FTC, sometimes we're also downright confused and off as to what's happening. By the way, I said cheesed off there. I just thought I'd bleep it out for gravitas and effect. Now, of course, I'm not going to read this out verbatim. I'm going to cover what I think are the important points and expand on them. For example, YouTube and Google agreed to create a mechanism so that channel owners can designate when the videos they upload to YouTube are, to use the words of COPPA, directed to children. The purpose of this requirement is to make sure that both YouTube and channel owners or content creators are complying with the law. That mechanism is this audience setting that you can set at either a channel level or by individual video on whether or not your content is made for kids. You can't avoid these settings even if you don't live in the US, because your content may be viewed by children in the US, and YouTube sneakily added the wording and/or other laws in there as well, just to cover every country, every planet, every solar system, every galaxy in the entire universe. Now, up until a couple of months ago, I, along with every single person watching this video, had no idea who or what COPPA is. So to briefly explain, if you're that interested, if not, skip to this part in the video. Passed by Congress in 1998, the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act is a federal law that protects the privacy of children under 13. COPPA's foundational principle is one that most people can agree on. Parents, not kids, companies, platforms, or content creators, should be in control when it comes to information collected from children online. The FTC, that's the Federal Trade Commission, enforces the law through the COPPA rule. In general, COPPA requires operators of commercial websites and online services that are directed to children to provide notice and obtain variable parental, you see me skipping over the page there seamlessly, consent before, I've lost my train of thought now. In general, COPPA requires operators of commercial websites and online services that are directed to children to provide notice and obtain verifiable parental consent before they collect personal information from kids under 13. Now, this next bit goes some way to explaining how YouTube got themselves in this monumental mess. Under COPPA, personal information also covers what are called persistent identifiers, behind-the-scenes code that recognizes a user over time and across different sites or online services. That could be an IP address or a cookie when it's used to serve targeted ads. Now, on the face of it, that would seem pretty self-evident and relatively easy to implement even on a platform the size of YouTube, because YouTube for years and years and years have clearly stated in their terms of service that in order to use YouTube and sign into the platform, you must be over the age of 13. However, the information YouTube have been providing to potential brands and advertisers has been somewhat contradictory. According to evidence provided by the FTC, Google presented the following information to toy manufacturers Mattel and Hasbro. 93% of tweens visit YouTube. It's a favourite website of those aged between 2 and 12. Is today's leader in reaching 6 to 11-year-olds. It would appear that YouTube must have been collecting the data somewhere, as the FTC states. YouTube actively marketed itself as a top destination for kids in presentations to makers of popular children's products and brands. So you've got an idea of what COPPA is and the fact that the FTC enforces this, and why they have a big beef with YouTube, because YouTube have been telling advertisers exactly why their platform is so popular with children. But what does any of this have to do with you? COPPA applies in the same way it would if a channel owner had its own website or app. If a channel owner uploads content to a platform like YouTube, the channel might meet the definition of a website or an online service covered by COPPA, depending on the nature of the content and the information collected. Or to put it another way, to begin with, you are a video content creator, but you need a platform to distribute your content on, and that's where YouTube comes into play. But once you start using YouTube, you are taking advantage of all of their features and tools and the identifiers they use to collect information on the internet. That might be through cookies. And once you put your hand in that cookie jar and you discover that there are children under the age of 13 in there, that's where the FTC comes into play. And if you want me to eat one of these cookies, I'm afraid they are Jasper's, and I ain't touching them. Right, Jasper, we've rehearsed this. You're the FTC. This is a cookie from YouTube. Oh, you want it so bad, don't you? Now it's game over. That's a $170 million fine right there. And this is where YouTube don't want to pay any more fines, which is why this terrifying number of $42,530 keeps cropping up. That's the maximum penalty the FTC can levy on you for every single video on your channel that violates COPPA. So you as an individual need to understand what content makes it directed to children, and so far we haven't really got any help from YouTube. They've said get legal advice, who can afford that, and so on and so on. So here is some information from the FTC themselves. How channel owners can determine if their content is directed to children. I think it's worth reading this entire section out. Under COPPA, there is no one-size-fits-all answer about what makes a site directed to children. Whew, thank you for saying that. You've at least acknowledged that it is very difficult to determine what is kids' content for the individual. But they can offer some guidance. To be clear, your content isn't considered directed to children just because some children may see it. And we'll come back to that a little later, because there is more information coming out about audience guidance with content. However, if your intended audience is kids under 13, you're covered by COPPA and have to honour the rules requirements. The rules set out additional factors the FTC will consider in determining whether your content is child-directed. The subject matter, visual content, the use of animated characters or child-orientated activities and incentives, the kind of music or other audio content, the age of models, whatever that means, the presence of child celebrities or celebrities who appeal to children, language or other characteristics on the site, whether advertising that promotes or appears on the site is directed to children, and competent and reliable empirical evidence about the age of the audience. But I thought YouTube wasn't supposed to collect that data. I don't know, these seem a bit broad and not just leveled towards YouTube, which still makes it all a bit vague. And with that general vagueness and confusion in mind, the FTC are delighted to share some general rules of thumb that are as follows. First, unless you're affirmatively targeting kids, there are many subject matter categories where you don't have to worry about COPPA. For example, if your videos are about traditionally adult activities like employment, finances, politics, home ownership, home improvement, or travel, you're probably not covered unless your content is geared towards kids. The same would be true for videos aimed at high school or college students. On the other hand, got the right piece of paper now. If your content includes traditional children's pastimes or activities, it may be child-directed. Second, just because your video has bright colours or animated characters doesn't mean you're automatically covered by COPPA. While many animated shows are directed at kids, the FTC recognises there can be animated programming that appeals to everyone. For example, in the summer, we did a Creator Story animated series of videos, one on Steve Dotto, the other one on Ohana Adventures. They were animated, but were they directed at kids, or does it depend on the subject matter? Preston Plays was one of those animated videos. He's into gaming and attracts a younger audience. Would that have appealed to kids or video creators? Again, it still leads to a lot of unanswered questions. This next example might be the most simple and concrete one to understand, but at the same time, worryingly reveals the level of sophistication that might be used by the FTC to determine whether or not your content is appropriate for children. For example, many content creators explicitly stated in the About section of their YouTube channel that their intended audience was children under 13. I've already innocently joked about this in other videos, that just by putting a disclaimer on screen saying that the content is not appropriate for under 13s wouldn't wash with the FTC. But apparently sticking that in your About section of your channel is absolutely fine. We advocate updating your About section to make sure that it includes keywords and it's shared to the right audience, but adding this line helps you with the FTC? That seems a little easy. Now, I hope the FTC's investigations are a little more thorough than this, because unscrupulous channels have been gaming the YouTube system for over a decade. And if the About section is one of the areas that the FTC is going to use to judge content, that's a little troubling. Some of the channel owners also enabled settings that made their content appear when using searches for names of popular toys or animated characters. I'm not sure what they mean by enabled settings. I think what they're trying to say is that if a content creator uses certain keywords in their metadata, tags and title descriptions, then the videos are more likely to be found by a certain target audience. For example, if you include Barbie doll in the video title, then it's likely to be found by girls between the ages of maybe 4 and 13 at a rough guess. I don't know, I haven't been searching that term much in the last couple of weeks. But does that mean that creators might be banned from using certain keywords that might appeal to children under the age of 13? Surely not. Take NerdSync example of why the DuckTales song sticks in your head.
Life is like a hurricane here in Duckburg. Race cars, lasers, aeroplanes. It's a duck blur.
That song is still stuck in my head 30 years after I watched the original cartoon, and NerdSync's video on it is a deep educational insight into why that is. I don't think that video would necessarily appeal to children under the age of 13 because it's for the retro version of the cartoon and it is so complex that it might be boring for kids, but it uses DuckTales as a keyword. This gets very confusing, very cloudy in its judgment the moment you unpeel a layer of any of these examples. And if all of these examples do fail to give you an answer on your content, the FTC suggests that you indirectly canvass your audience. It might help to consider how others view your content and content similar to yours. Has your channel been reviewed on sites that evaluate kids' content? Is your channel or channels like yours mentioned in blogs for parents or young children, or in media articles about child-directed content? Have you surveyed your users, or is there other empirical evidence about the age of your audience? Again, I've got an issue with surveying your audience because YouTube are going to remove all of the tools that allow you to do that on your channel, such as comments and the community tab and notifications for subscribers. It's a catch-22 situation, to be honest. I would also venture to say that the vast majority of channels never get the privilege of being featured on blogs or reviewed by websites. So is that a bit of a insight into who the FTC are going to go after? Those being larger channels, well established, probably already know who their target audience is, but are creating content regardless of the rules and regulations. The more and more I read this and dive into the FTC COPPA YouTube rabbit hole, the more I feel as if everything I say to you is my interpretation of what's out there. And I don't feel as if any of it is true fact. And to be honest, I think until we start to see concrete examples in 2020 of channels being affected by this, we're all trying to go forward with 30, maybe 40% of the actual information that we need. We'll continue to do content on this, but man, this is hard stuff. And I think a lot of channels are in for some rude awakenings. Phew. But on the other hand, it could turn into a complete red herring and affect far fewer channels than we expect. I think it all hinges on the gaming area of YouTube. It's a huge area, lots of creators really worried about whether gaming content is classed as children's content. That's going to be the litmus test, I think, what happens in that area. I want to return to the topic of audience now. YouTube ask a very simple question to their video creator. Is your content made for kids or not? As we've shown in the examples here and the research that we've all been doing, the answer is a lot more complicated and broad for most channels. Take Dude Perfect as a highlight example. Their content of trick shots appeals to both an audience young and old. I can enjoy it as much as a 7-year-old child, just in slightly different ways. So what is the answer for Dude Perfect? YouTube give you a very binary choice, but according to COPPA, there's a lot more leeway in how you as a channel creator can interpret that question and answer it. In a frequently asked section on the FTC website, they say COPPA only covers information collected online from children. It does not cover information collected from adults that may pertain to children. Thus, COPPA is not triggered by an adult uploading photos of children on a general audience site or in a non-child directed portion of a mixed audience website. Non-child portion of a mixed audience website? YouTube Kids? Normal YouTube where you have to be over the age of 13 to sign up? Doesn't that mean that most of the content in that area of YouTube should by definition be mixed audience anyway? I genuinely don't know the answer to that. I would probably have to speak to a lawyer, one such as Ian Corzine, who I have to give all of the credit for again for much of what I'm talking about here. He's done another expose, fantastic video on the topic. Definitely check it out. And I will also say, just as a general YouTube strategy, all he's doing right now is making content on COPPA, the FTC. He's a social media lawyer channel at large, covering many topics, but because this is such a powerful trend right now, he is doubling down on his content and profiting from hundreds of thousands of views. And it's a clear example of when YouTube decides that you are the ambassador or the thought leader for something, ironically that's really giving YouTube a hammering right now, you should continue to make content on that subject, which is exactly what Ian is doing. So do make sure to check out the channel. Really worth investing some time in there. And one last thing to mention in this document, the FTC is having another look at the COPPA ruling. In a previous video, I showed you that there was a website where you could actually comment on all of this and give your opinions, concerns as a video creator. At the time, it looked as if the comments period has expired, but now the FTC have extended it to December the 9th. So you still have a chance to make an impact, add something constructive to the conversation. Make sure to get over there as quickly as you can. More content on the FTC and COPPA right over here. And since my beard no longer does protect me from any of these rulings, channel termination, fines, do you think I should keep the beard or not? Let me know in the comments below. Enjoy the rest of your video making day.